Welcome everyone to Not That Media. My name is John, and as we round out 2024, it's time for the inevitable Top 10 2024 new horror movies. So come along with me as I do my first Not That Media ranking video. 2024 has been a little bit of a mixed bag, and there have been some real winners and there have been some real failures in the world of horror, but there has been a really widespread range of different types of horror movie, and I've been really pleased to be able to go to the cinema a number of times and go through this list in advance to work out what is and isn't my favourite films of 2024. So what I did is I have 14 movies, all purchased on Blu-ray but obviously available on other streaming sites and platforms, and I've taken the 14 and whittled it down to a top 10. The only rule being is that all these films had to be released in 2024. Just to add a little bit of variety, I also asked my wife Jo to do exactly the same independent of me, gave her the same 14 movies and asked her to rank her top 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the dishonourable mention section to begin with, which is 3 movies that failed to be on either mine or Jo's list. I will then give you my top 10, and I'm then going to fly through Jo's top 10 as well, because sometimes I think it's nice to give a couple of different opinions, and also I find it quite interesting to see the difference in my list versus hers. Whilst majority of the list is exactly the same, each of us have one movie that did not appear on the other, but we both mutually agreed that there were 3 that definitely fit straight into the dishonourable mention. I'll have them listing coming up at the end, and obviously I'll make you aware of each one as we go through it. So, to begin with, it's time for dishonourable mentions. So whittling quickly through the 3 2024 horror movies that failed to arrive on either mine or Jo's list for horror, first up is 2024's Night Swim. What I would tell you about this film is if you have seen the trailer, the Marco Polo trailer, or the original short which Night Swim is based on, you've seen everything you need to see. Do not waste your money, do not waste your time, do not waste your streaming bandwidth. Just simply go to YouTube, put in Night Swim Trailer 1, which is the Marco Polo trailer, watch that, you've seen the best thing in the film. The film was originally a short that was then extended out into 90 minutes. The first 25 minutes is a load of boring nonsense about a baseball player who has had an injury or career-ending injury, but by some magical force in a swimming pool is suddenly able to become a baseball player again. There's a dejected child and an unhappy wife, but ultimately the film then builds to a kind of a really bad rip-off of a J-horror movie where it tries to be The Ring and The Grudge with supernatural forces that make absolutely no sense. The film builds to what it thinks is a really good twist, but the truth is this is the perfect example about how you make a fantastic short, you then take the very best scene out of the movie, which is the short, and make it the trailer so that people will part with their money, go to the cinema and watch this. And before people wonder when they come to, oh, well, you're just saying that, we went to the cinema to see this, I bought this on Blu-ray as a new release as it came out. I burnt my fingers twice on this because I do believe if I'm going to talk negatively about any films, I should at least give it 2 opportunities to prove itself. This is boring, dull, slow. Night Swim is not recommended. The next dishonourable mention, I'm going to try to be slightly more positive about it, is 2024's Imaginary. I was really excited for Imaginary. I saw the trailers. As a horror fan of 30 odd years now, I am not against teenage-friendly horror films. I'm not against the fact that Blumhouse likes to put out films like Five Nights at Freddy's, Megan, and things like that, and they come out to varying success. I think Megan was a really great film. I thought that Five Nights at Freddy's was mediocre because I'm a bigger fan of the game, so I don't want to be one of those game purists, but I was disappointed. I liked what I got, but I wanted more. Imaginary came out and I was really disappointed with this film. What I would say is the advertising, the look of it is fantastic. Just the bear on the checkboard floor with the background, nothing to see here kind of a situation. What's going on? All this mystery, all these scares. You then see the trailers and the trailers totally spoiled this film. It gave everything away. So going in, I was already disappointed to think, okay, I know I've seen too much. It's badly acted. It's badly put together. Very tragically, because if you've seen the trailer, all the magic has been spoiled very quickly. It tries very hard to do false endings and throw all the kind of things at it. It's just boring. It tries really hard to do a lot. It's a fantastic idea, just executed really poorly. I would recommend staying away from this, but if you are a aspiring horror fan, or if you are somebody looking to offer gateway horror films to teenagers or younger audiences, Imaginary is exactly that. There's nothing special here, but I think a 14 or a 15-year-old who's never seen a horror film. If this was Baby's first horror film, I think they'd be genuinely frightened of this, but it's kind of in the same line as Ouija 1 for me. A great idea, poorly executed. If they do a sequel in the same way Ouija did a prequel, maybe it can be redeemed in sequels, but this, a lot of idea, very little payoff. Last dishonourable mention for 2024's new releases is The Strangers Chapter 1. Yes, sadly, The Strangers Chapter 1, perhaps arguably my biggest disappointment movie of the year. Whilst Night Swim and Imaginary did not make the list, The Strangers was a film that I was genuinely excited to go. I went to the cinema with my wife, friend Scream Queen Jav and his partner, and we were all set up to have a really good time. What we got, or what I got, was a very paint-by-numbers, boring experience of taking a great franchise, and I do consider it a franchise, of The Strangers and Strangers Prey by Night, two films I really enjoyed. A lot of people don't like Prey by Night. I really did. We went to the cinema to see it. I thought it was great. So I had a lot of excitement going into this film. There wasn't a lot of trailers. In fact, there was next to no trailers, very little advertising. So this was one of those that you would only get to see it if you knew it was coming out kind of a situation, because there was no money behind the advertising for this. What you get is a really bad rehash of the original movie, but with the first 10 to 15 minutes dedicated to bolting on the idea of a town surrounding the Strangers, the notoriety of the Strangers, the cult of the Strangers, and it's almost like a American Werewolf in London opening, where this couple go to this cafe, and there's the cop, there's the bar woman, there's the people, and they're all talking about strangers and all this kind of stuff. It gets very frustrating because you quickly realise that all of these characters are being introduced, but you're not going to see them for the rest of the film because they have been set up for parts 2 and part 3 that were all filmed back to back. So on the bright side, this is one piece of a jigsaw, and sometimes you can't appreciate the jigsaw until it's completed. So I will stick around for Strangers 2 and 3. The Strangers themselves were great. There's some great tense moments with them. They deliver. There's just not enough of them. They're barely in it, and it's actually quite frustrating when you realise like that how much you're not going to get. The two main characters are deplorable. They are not good actors. They are not good in the situation. They don't, and the script is poor in that they don't even react to the situation like normal human beings should. There is a really frustrating, this is what I'm going to say about this film to sum it up, there's a really frustrating scene where characters just don't do what they're supposed to do. They are under the floorboards, crawling under the dirt in the crawl space to get away. The Strangers are above them in the house. They mustn't make a noise. They can't make a sound. She's covering her mouth when she puts her hand through a nail because the tears are crying. She can't make a noise. They crawl, they get just outside the crawl space, stand up in front of the window and go, right, okay, we got to get out of here, and literally shout. And it's like the logic and the rules of this film makes no sense. You've got characters just doing stupid things for the sake of it. They have opportunities to escape, they don't take it. They have opportunities to shoot them. There's a scene where the Strangers are doing this attack, and one of them's got a shotgun, and you're just saying to yourself, why are they not shooting the Strangers with a shotgun? Bad thinking. I think it annoyed me more actually because I think Strangers 1 and 2 was actually quite intelligent in a lot of it, but this kind of pulls horror back 5-10 years is what I would say. So like people investigating strange noises, people not shooting at people who are trying to kill them when they have a gun in their hand. Disappointing is what I would say, but I will stick with part 2 and part 3. I am a sucker for a sequel, so we will see. Maybe 2025 The Strangers Chapter 2 will be in the top 10, but Strangers Chapter 1, unless you're a completionist like me, I probably wouldn't bother until the trilogy is all available to watch in one sitting. Okay, so we're going to start with my top 10. I'm going to fly through these as quickly as I can. I'm not going to spend any time talking about, obviously, release dates and things like that. All of them came out in 2024. I just want to go through these as quickly as humanly possible because I would like this video to be as tight as possible because I do have a little bit of a habit of rambling on. So number 10 on my top 10 is Shudder's In a Violent Nature. Now, In a Violent Nature is a great concept, a really good idea. I really enjoyed it, a really good independent movie. But it didn't make any higher than the 10th place because, unfortunately, there is a lot of time spent. I'm not going to say wasted because it makes sense within the narrative, but there's a lot of time poorly utilised, which is essentially a nicer way of saying wasted. But anyway, in a nutshell, if you've never seen In a Violent Nature and you want to know what it is, imagine Friday the 13th or any silent killer zombie slasher movie, not just to be prejudiced and say Friday the 13th. Imagine if you saw Jason Voorhees come out of the ground and you proceeded to follow him for the next 90 minutes, as opposed to going to the teenagers and the adults and everybody else involved in the story. Bar a couple of small moments in the movie, you will always be following the serial killer Johnny, who is a renowned and remembered serial killer in a vein of Friday the 13th, but obviously not copyright infringing. He is resurrected as a result of teenagers messing around near his grave and stealing a locket that is very important to him. But when I say you follow him, I mean you literally follow him for 90 minutes. Every squelch step, every moment walking. There is so much walking in this movie that it gets to the point that once the first 5 or 10 minutes have passed and the novelty of, oh yeah, you literally get to follow the killer, you see him coming out, you see him waking up, you see him reacting, you see him find his weapon, you see him do his first kill, and then you realise, right, now we're going to follow him to the next kill. We're going to follow. And when you see people in the distance, and you have them running and screaming. In a normal horror film, you'd cut to them, they'd be running, you'd cut back to the killer who's walking, and there'd be a lot of cutting. There's no cutting in terms of camera in this movie. Johnny walks a lot, and you will spend a lot of time walking with Johnny. But that being said, I think this is a really individual film. I think it's a very unique movie. I like the way Johnny is set up. I like his backstory. He has the makings to be up there with the Freddys and the Jasons and the Michaels if he could get more screen time, even though the whole film is him. I don't think there's plans for sequels, but the reason this is in the top 10 and defeats the dishonorable mentions is this has got some great kills in it. A really good recommend, but that's only number 10 on my list. Number 9 on my list, and this might come as a little bit of a surprise to some people, is Longlegs. Now, I have to say with Longlegs, this is one of those situations where I think this is a great film, let me just say that outright. And if you don't know what this film is, basically in the pursuit of a serial killer, an FBI agent uncovers a series of occult clues that she must solve to end his terrifying killing spree. Now, what I would say, if you are unfamiliar with this movie or somehow you missed the advertising campaign, the whole reason to watch this movie is that it was advertised as Nicolas Cage's first foray into proper horror serial killer characters. Whilst he has been synonymous with some pretty bad horror films and been in quite a few horror films, Mandy, The Colour of Outer Space, and all that kind of stuff, this was the first time he was going to be playing the serial killer or the monster in the movie. So all the advertising was about Nicolas Cage. Everything was about him. You didn't see him. You can see on the cover, he's not on the cover. He's not on the back at all. They made a real point to hide Nicolas Cage's appearance because it was all part of the build. You know, this guy who is renowned for being totally off the wall, a bit crazy, laughing, screaming, punching, judo kicking, jumping around, and that's just on a normal interview, that is. What could this guy do when he applied himself to something like Longlegs? And I'll never forget the lead actress whose name I can't remember, but she was the woman from It Follows, a film I absolutely hate. I remember a trailer which was just a black screen and it said, "This is the first time X actress is seeing Nicolas Cage in the Longlegs makeup. This is her heart rate." And you watched her heart rate spike through the ceiling because it was the first time she had seen him in the makeup and doing the whole performance. My opinion of this film is, if you're a really big fan of Silence of the Lambs, Seven, you're going to love this film. It's a great film. My opinion, though, is, and it's got a very tense, very dark ending, which is kind of up there, in my opinion, in terms of like shock realization, kind of like Hereditary, the ending of Hereditary, which is very bleak and very dark. It's not supernatural in that kind of a tense, in that there's people floating around and things like that, but it kind of evoked that same kind of hair on the back of my neck feeling, the end of Longlegs, as it did for Hereditary. What I would say is Nicolas Cage is the best and the worst thing in this film, and that's why it only gets number 9 on my top 10, because when Nicolas Cage is doing all of his really scary, over-the-top screaming, shouting mommy, throwing himself around, punching steering wheels, I laugh. To be perfectly honest, he's very scary, Nicolas Cage. And if you can divorce your mind from Nicolas Cage, the internet personality or the phenomenon that is the massive weight of unbearable talent, or whatever it is, the massive weight of unbelievable talent, can't remember, great film anyway. He is spectacular in this. He is very scary in this film. He has some great moments. I'm not going to put up any screenshots or tell you anything in particular, but the main interrogation scene, which is the scene that this lady was talking about in the trailer, is genuinely tense and genuinely scary. If you're a big fan of Nicolas Cage and you can't get past the silliness, you might struggle to find this film scary when he's trying to be over the top. But if you can get away with that and you can just sit and divorce your mind from Nick Cage, the personality, I think you'll have a great time with this film. Very tense, very interesting. A modern day Silence of the Lambs. Maybe, without the Hannibal Lecter character, maybe. I really like Silence of the Lambs, but number 9. Number 8 was a little bit of a surprise that it made my top 10, and a little bit of a surprise how much I actually enjoyed it, and that was Baghead. Now, to give you the plot of Baghead very quickly, because I know this is kind of one of those films I kind of feel came and went, is Iris inherits a rundown pub from her estranged father and discovers a dark secret within its basement. Baghead, a shape-shifting creature that will let you speak to lost loved ones, but not without consequences. I went to the cinema to see this, me and my wife. I had a really good time, really enjoyed it. It felt kind of fresh. It was a concept I'd never seen before, a creature that can take on the form of the dead, but only for a certain amount of time, and if it stays in that form for too long, it then has the ability to get inside your head, and this thing is desperate to escape. And what would you do as a human being? The main actress, without saying too much, Iris, she has had bereavement, she has had terrible loss in her life. How far would you go? What bargains would you make with a creature if it had the ability to let you have that one last conversation with that loved one or that friend or that person that you lost under whatever circumstances, that person you never got to say goodbye to? What kind of pull would that creature have on you if you actually entered into a deal to allow this creature to bring these people back? I thought it was a great idea. I think Baghead was sparingly used. Some may argue that it should have been on the screen a lot more. I disagree. I think it was a great story. It had a really good cast of unique and new people. A lot of people, fresh faces, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great time. You can probably stream this for free at the time of recording. I would recommend watching it. It's a really good film. Is there room for a sequel? Maybe, but I kind of like this one and done nature of Baghead. So coming in at number 7, we're just going to slightly slant more into the comedic world of the horror world, is Abigail. Abigail is a great film, really good time. It's got a fantastic cast of horror regulars. In a nutshell, what I would say to you is if you can see this film blind and without any trailers or any information, do go and see this film. If you want to skip ahead maybe 30 seconds now, because I'm going to very briefly talk about the synopsis, but I really think this is a film worth watching as blind as humanly possible. So basically, a group of thieves and thugs are employed to abduct a little girl, Abigail, and take her to a mansion and basically look after her for the night. If they are successful, they will receive $50 million as a ransom. What they don't realise, of course, is that the girl is not locked in with them, they are locked in this house with her. And it turns out that Abigail is actually a vampire. So all hell breaks loose. This film It's got some great gore, it's got some great set pieces, some fantastic makeup effects. The girl who plays Abigail is really good, really chilling. There is a scene where she is in a cage talking to the cast, and she is genuinely acting years beyond probably what she should be and what she's capable of doing, but she is very good. There's a great kill scene where she takes someone down and then proceeds to dance in the background because she's a ballerina, and it's hauntingly kind of chilly and scary, but it's really funny at the same time. This is a really good recommend, Abigail. I don't want to say too much more about it because I think you should really see this, spoiler free. If you haven't seen any trailers, don't watch any trailers, don't read anything. I've already said too much already in my opinion. Great time, great gore, great laughs. Abigail is a recommend. So coming in at number 6, and maybe for some a little bit controversial, but it's my list and I'll choose what I want, is Ghostbusters Afterlife. Yes, okay, not quite a full-blown horror movie, but let's be perfectly honest, Ghostbusters has always had its hand in the horror franchise, and I liked Ghostbusters. I like all of them, and I found them scary as a child, so as far as I'm concerned, it is an ongoing comedy horror franchise. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, I'll tell you the truth, it's not as good as Afterlife. I think Afterlife was very special, a requel that was was really strong, and the ending of Ghostbusters Afterlife I don't think will ever be topped for any Ghostbusters fan. But Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is a great example of a ongoing franchise that has realised it has had lightning strike with its first movie and is not trying to copy that. It's actually instead trying to expand it. All the old Ghostbusters who are still alive make an appearance, but it's not about them, it's not their story. This is about securing a future for the Ghostbusters. Paul Rudd is there and a bigger team, a lot more technology and ideas are being inspired. A lot more of the animated series, the expanded animated series, the real Ghostbusters it was called, is involved in this. If you're a fan of that old cartoon, there's definitely some stuff to see here. A lot of people didn't like this film. A lot of people complained about this film. I don't think they're right. I think it's a little silly, to be perfectly honest. If you like the first two Ghostbusters, there's no reason why you wouldn't like this Ghostbusters. An ancient creature comes to life, or an ancient demon ghost thing is released, and the whole of New York is frozen. So it's up to the Ghostbusters, old and new, to unite to defeat this creature, obviously to save the day. It's a great movie, really enjoyed it. It was great to see, as a little bit of a side mention, James Acaster in a serious role, even though he delivers quite a lot of comedy in it. I had a really good time. I think the ghosts continue to be genuinely creepy. Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd, okay, they're in reduced roles, but they still deliver gold. If you're a Ghostbusters fan, 100%. And this will always, a Ghostbusters movie will always get in my top 10 list because I love the Ghostbusters. So, number 6, nowhere near the best, nowhere near the worst. So coming in at number 5 is A Quiet Place Day One. This was a little bit of a surprise for me because I didn't actually expect to enjoy this movie. It's got a great cast, the two leads are fantastic, and the reason that I think I really enjoyed this was that whilst I think A Quiet Place 1 and 2 is genuinely very scary and still makes me jump in places, I actually had reservations about the idea of going back to Day One because I think it had already been kind of covered in Quiet Place 2. We'd already seen Day One to an extent, but no, we did not see Day One. And I think the first two movies, you only ever really saw one or maybe two or three of the aliens, the creatures, the angels of death, I think they're referred to as. This one's got dozens of the things. This is a special effects extravaganza, but it's got a lot of heart. I found it a very interesting take to take the lead actress, her character, and have her being a cancer sufferer. So a woman arguably already going through the worst event of anybody's life, having to deal with obviously the treatment and surviving cancer, is then put front and centre in the middle of this alien invasion. And when she meets this gentleman whose name I can never remember, but he got a lot of fame from Stranger Things, I really liked his performance because he was genuinely very scared, and I think John Krasinski, can never get that right. He was great. Cillian Murphy is great, but they are known for being kind of tough guys. They are very controlling of the situation. They can handle it. They know what to do. Even if they don't know what to do, they come across as knowing what to do. I actually quite liked the fresh idea of a man who was so terrified to be left alone that he allies himself with this cancer survivor, and the two of them, a coward and a cancer survivor, have to work together to actually survive. It's not even saving the day, it's surviving the day. The two of them, very mild spoiler here because I don't want to say too much, the two of them are brought together by the woman's cat. The cat is an absolutely astonishing performance. CGI used very, very sparingly. It's 2 or 3 cats as always with these kind of films, but some genuine heart. And if you're a cat lover, the genuine terror of the angels of death being in the proximity of the cat is enough to have you on the edge of your seat. Genuinely good, genuinely thrilling, real surprise hit of the year. It's number 5 because I enjoyed films more, but I was genuinely impressed with A Quiet Place Day One. Watch the trilogy, and I recommend actually maybe watching it in order of Day One, then Part 1, then Part 2. Real good film. So my top 4, this is when things started to get a little bit difficult for me because arguably for me, all 4 of these could probably interchange into number 1, number 2, or number 3, or number 4. My number 1 has a very specific reason for being in first place, which I'll get to in a moment, but all 4 of these next films I would put my hat on and say great films of the year. So number 4, arguably even now I consider this maybe being higher, is Maxine. Now for those of you who don't know what Maxine is, in 1980s Hollywood, an adult film star, an aspiring actress, Maxine Minks finally gets her big break, but as a mysterious killer stalks the starlets of Hollywood, a trail of blood threatens to reveal her sinister past. This is the conclusion of the Ty West trilogy, which was X, Pearl, and then Maxine. I think Maxine is the strongest of the three. I think this is a really well-made film, really good. Mia Goth is firing on all cylinders. Kevin Bacon, who is an actor who I don't necessarily talk too much about, is absolutely spectacular in it as well. Really impressed. This feels like the 80s. A lot of films aspire to get that 80s aesthetic. This is oozing the 80s. The music is spectacular. The kills are really good. The fight scenes are great. When Maxine gets on the case to make the decision to actually actively seek out the killer, there's a fantastic scene in a nightclub bar that I think was absolutely well done, so spectacularly made. It made Maxine kind of arriving as the Scream Queen, which I think she actually deserves to be. Scream Queen is a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, but I think Mia Goth has become the noughties, certainly. Scream Queen, really enjoyed this film, would quite happily watch it again. Rumours of part 4 are always circling. Ty West has said that he does have a story for a fourth one, but we will wait and see. This for me is a perfect ending. I don't particularly think I'd want to see a part 4 without Mia Goth or without Maxine in any kind of way. It's not a spoiler to kind of reveal the fact that if there is going to be a part 4, presumably Mia Goth would return, but the fact that she plays multiple characters across the whole trilogy doesn't necessarily mean that part 4 confirms that Maxine is dead or alive. Really enjoyed it. Maxine is one hell of a ball buster is what I would say. I won't say any more on that scene. Strong recommend. So my number 3 might be a little bit out of left field for some people, is Beetlejuice. Now I have to confess I absolutely love Beetlejuice. This was a film that I have always wanted to see or long wanted to be made. So when it was announced in 2024 that Michael Keaton and Tim Burton would be returning, Catherine O'Hara and Winona Ryder would return as their respective characters, I was really excited. For nostalgic reasons, I absolutely love this film, but I think it delivers as well. It's not the same as the original movie. It goes in a slightly sidesteps the original movie. It does give answers to questions as to why certain characters from the first film are not prevalent, but I really enjoyed this movie. I think sometimes people say that you can't revisit a character after 35 years. I disagree. Michael Keaton is fantastic. There's much more Beetlejuice in it. Tim Burton brings out his old tricks when it comes to the stop motion, the creature effects, all these kind of things, and delivers a proper solid movie. I think that this is well worth people's attention, well worth people's time. Have fun. It doesn't always have to be super brutal, super scary to be in my top 10 or anybody's top 10. But Beetlejuice, this is one for the family as far as I'm concerned when it comes to horror. Strong recommend. So coming in at number 2, and it might be a surprise to many people because I do feel like this was a little bit of a sleeper hit in 2024. It kind of had a big explosion and then kind of went a little bit quiet. But it's Shudder's Late Night with the Devil. This is free to stream on Shudder at the time of recording. Halloween night 1977. In an attempt to boost viewing figures, a struggling late-night talk show host promises to broadcast television's first live possession. This is the footage from that infamous and extremely harrowing event. This is a found footage movie, but not in the traditional sense, in that it cuts from found footage to film, as odd as that sounds. When we are watching Late Night, the late night show, it is in 4:3, it is grainy, there's so much time and effort is made to recreate a 1977 late night talk show. It looks so authentic, it feels authentic, all those browns and oranges and mauve kind of colours on the sets and everything. It really feels like old archival footage. But when the camera cuts for various reasons, be it an ad break or because something happens in the film that warrants the cameras to be turned off, we don't jump to a different scene. The camera changes to the black and white 16:9 because the camera will continue to go on. So what you get, and I find it really fascinating, is you get the front of house presentation that is the late night talk show. But every time our lead actor, who's spectacular, and I can't pronounce his name, so I'm not even going to try, but he's fantastic. When he steps into the back to get his water, to mop his brow, or to resolve an issue, the camera changes and follows him. So you get the back of the curtain and the front of the curtain. And I quite like that because when he's in front of the cameras and in front of the audience, He gives one performance which is very Jay Leno, all those kind of characters, you know, all those late night talk show hosts. But when he goes behind the camera and behind the stage, you realise that this is a man who is concerned, terrified, worried. But how far will you go for success? How far will you go with your failing career to redeem yourself? Now, what I would say about this film is it is a slow burn, but that is not in the tense that it's going to be boring. I actually think that a considerable amount of time is spent to build the characters, build the scenario, build the suspense, go through the history of not only our main character, but also the possessed girl. Who is she? Why is she here? What is the reasoning behind it, etc. A lot of time is spent to build on this film. So when things do start to inevitably kick off, it really delivers. So Late Night with the Devil, I'm not going to say anything else on it because I think you should see this as relatively spoiler-free as possible. It does deliver on its promise. A really strong film. And so number one is probably going to be no surprises to a lot of my audience, but number one, 2024 for me, is of course Terrifier 3. Now let me be totally honest, I think that 2024 has now become the year of Art the Clown. I saw a post yesterday stating that as of yesterday, I think it was, Terrifier 3 is the most profitable film of 2024 in terms of budget versus box office. This film has gone on to make over $90 million, 45 times its budget. This film is spectacularly successful, really deservedly so. I think in 2024 it's really cool that an independent filmmaker, Damien Leone, is really cashing in a good way on the success of this character, Art the Clown. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Terrifier 3. Obviously, Art the Clown has become a household name. The iconography of him, not only in his clown suit, but now in his Santa clown suit, has totally perforated pop culture. You can't go anywhere without seeing t-shirts, pops, Blu-rays, boxes, everything. Art the Clown, Art Mania is absolutely taking over, and long may it continue. For me, I put Terrifier 3 as number one for a couple of reasons. I think in terms of horror, in terms of violence and gore, you're probably not going to find anything better than Terrifier 3. There is some... I saw this at the cinema. I had the pleasure of going to see this at the cinema the weekend of the For the Love of Horror convention that I attend frequently, well, the last 4 or 5 years, and I will continue to do so. I had the fantastic pleasure of sitting in the cinema to watch this, because this was one of those films where they claimed people were throwing up and running out and religious groups were fighting against this movie. So I wanted to see it. I wanted to ask myself, can I sit in the cinema and watch Terrifier 3 alone? Because A, I was in Manchester for the convention, and B, I wasn't going to drag my pregnant wife to a film that was going to potentially make her throw up. I think Art the Clown, David Howard Thornton, is absolutely firing on all cylinders. I really like the build on the mythology. I like the expansion on the detail of the story. Sienna and Jonathan are fantastic as well. But I had the great pleasure also at the weekend to meet two of the new actors who appeared in Terrifier 3. So I made this number one, not only because I think it's a good film and a lot of fun if you're a horror hound, a gore hound, and it's a funny film, believe it or not. It's very dark. If you thought that a chainsaw going up the ass of a man could not be funny, this film will make it. You will be horrified and laughing at the same time. Such a strange combination. If you are a fan of all those old gory movies, I don't want to say, I'll give you examples like the level of violence in like Brain Dead and things like that. If you just want to see blood and guts and brains and balls and everything else flying around all over the screen, this is your film. But I like the story, I like the characters, and it has some great nostalgia because for me, I love going to For the Love of Horror, so this will always have a special place that I got to see it that weekend, got to meet some of the cast. I picked up, as you can see, the Collector's Edition, First Edition 4K from HMV. Long may it continue. We've got at least one more Terrifier movie to come, maybe two, but yeah, number one, 2024, new release. It's got to be Terrifier 3 on my top 10. Okay, so thanks for watching that, and hopefully you're still with me, and hopefully you enjoyed that top 10. I'm now going to run through Joe's top 10. I'm going to literally hold up the case and read off the notes very quickly, because obviously I've already shown the cases and things, but I do want to give you an alternative top 10. And ironically, it has to be said, I'll just give you a mild spoiler up front. My number one, Terrifier 3, is not on Joe's list. She did not include it in her top 10. Whilst she is aware of the art boom and appreciates obviously all those kind of things, upon speaking with her, she just said they're not for her. her kind of film. I think because of my connection to For the Love of Horror, as I've said before, and my opportunity to meet quite a lot of the cast each year from various movies in the Terrifier series, I think Terrifier holds a very different thing for me than it does for her. And so, fair enough. We can't all be the same. And I appreciated her honesty that art did not make her top 10. So, top 10 for Joe was number 10, Abigail. All-rounded fun, spoilt by trailers, is what she then said. Part 9, which did not appear on my list, is Tarot. She wrote, interesting story and concept, just wasn't executed as it could have been. Totally agree with that. It's an okay movie. Again, if you've seen the trailers, you've seen everything you need to see. I haven't spoken about this as part of my top 10, so I'll spend a moment talking about it. A fantastic idea, just too long to get to it, and I think somebody got really excited about the idea of multiple monsters, multiple kills, and all that kind of stuff. It steals a lot from Final Destination in terms of concept of the killer coming for you. I think it's a great idea, just not executed as well, which is why it wasn't in my top 10, but it made Joe's number 9. So, number 8, Joe chose In a Violent Nature. Quite slow, but some great kills. Totally agree. Joe's number 7 was Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Fun story, great kids, Paul Rudd. Number 6, we have Beetlejuice. Fun adventure, great seeing almost everyone back. Number 5 for Joe was Longlegs, and she wrote, Nick Cage, so bizarre, mummy daddy, loved the story. Joe's number 4 was Baghead. She wrote, really good story, went in blind, was very pleasantly surprised by it. Joe's number 3 was A Quiet Place Day 1, terrifying, cat survives. Spoilers. Joe's number 2, interestingly, was Late Night with the Devil. Loved the setting, time period, really tense. Could imagine watching it live, really scary. And Joe's number 1 for 2024 was Maxine. So exciting, unsure where it would go, really good story, perfect end to a good trilogy. So that's going to do it for this 2024 ranking list. My number 1 was Terrifier 3, whilst Joe's was Maxine. 2 great films, I really enjoyed both of them. I strongly agree with Joe's list as much as my own. If you disagree with the list, great, that's what we're all here for. It's all part of the community that is YouTube. If you have recommendations or ideas, feel free to put them in the comments. Hopefully there's some in there that you haven't seen that you might want to be interested to go and look at. As I say, we're here at Not That Media to share the wealth, what I think is good. If I think it's good, why not tell people it's good? I don't want to be negative for the sake of being negative, but they can't all be winners. 2025, hopefully we'll have some very different horror films, so we'll see what 2025 brings. If you're new here, like I say, do like and subscribe. And as always, until the next time, stay scared.
I'm curious, did you always want to be in that line of work?
I always wanted to be famous.